crash now, of course, raises concerns for safety around the world. Investigators in France are searching for potential security lapses, perhaps. They're going through hours of surveillance tape, looking at the people who may have had access to that plane. Joining me now is Ambassador James Woolsey, former director of the CIA and chairman of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. It's good to have you here, sir. Welcome. Good morning to you.
Good to be with you, Mark.
You know, yesterday the president basically didn't speak publicly at all on this. Basically, Josh Earnest said we're waiting. You know, we're trying to figure out what happened here. Donald Trump went completely the other way. He said we saw what happened. Something just got blasted out of the sky. What's the better way to go here?
Well, this does seem as if it's pretty clear that it's terrorism. I think it might have been wise to have left a little bit of wiggle room. Mr. Trump did in his first statement where he said it looks like terrorism, didn't say it was, and then later I think he said, well, 100%, if you don't think it's terrorism, you're 100% wrong. I think one wants to try to avoid the 100% like formulations in things like this, because surprises are just definitely possible. But it does look very much as if it's terrorism. I'd say 90-10.
We'll see. You know, I mean, it goes to this whole issue of sort of calling out Islamic extremism, recognizing the threats that exist in the world. Newt Gingrich was on this morning just saying, look, you know, wake up, people. We need to understand the enemy. We need to get what's going on out there. And we don't really hear that from the White House. We don't hear those sort of clarion calls and wake up. And here's Mike McCall on this yesterday, and I want to get your thoughts on his statement.
Okay. We are not winning this war, and that violent extremists are not on the run, as the president says. They are on the march, and they are expanding at great cost to the free world. Today we worry about more than just terrorist cells. We worry also about full-fledged terrorist armies as they capture territory and enlist thousands to join their ranks.
What do you think?
Well, I think McCall's basically right. I think it's ridiculous to call them violent extremists. They're jihadis. They're Islamic or Islamist, if one prefers, violent revolutionaries. There are different things you can call them, but violent extremists is really very politically correct, and I think that's not a good formulation.
You know, I mean, the president really... Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the Muslim Brotherhood itself has a violent wing that is in on a lot of the planning for a number of terrorist operations, and they strive mightily to create a peaceful image in the United States, but they do have a violent side to them.
You know, the president basically has two tasks at hand. He's got to keep the country safe here at home and eliminate ISIS, both of which he said, you know, he believes are serious obligations of the presidency. And yet he communicates these things to the American people, some would say, very rarely. Why is that?
Well, because it doesn't fit the narrative. This White House focuses more on the narrative than on reality. So they're capable of calling Major Hassan, the psychiatrist who murdered 13 of his fellow soldiers in Fort Hood 3 or 4 years ago, a case of workplace violence. I mean, that's just stupid. It's like calling the Puritans who burned the witches in Salem, Massachusetts, fireplace violence perpetrators. It's just nuts.
You know, I mean, when you look at all that and you look at what's going on with the TSA and you see these ridiculously long lines that are happening, and you look at some of the perhaps more practical things that can be done, the president says he will not profile, and he's talked about that publicly quite a bit. Are there ways that you would recommend that we get to the heart of the problem that would keep people from being online for 3 hours?
Well, I think one has to pay attention to people who are likely to be causing the problem. I would call Rudy Giuliani and have him reassemble the team that he put together in New York to do patrolling in such a way as to focus on the real problems in New York, and had a very successful reduction in the crime rate. It's the same thing at airports. One wants to focus on the people who are likely to be the problem, not the very elderly tottering through and getting frisked. It's so politically correct that it's not effective.
Yeah. All right. Ambassador Woolsey, thank you very much. Always great to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Martha.